Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
We wrote about this recently. John Jay, who was one of the authors of that, talked about the greatest threat to our country is never going to be a foreign foe. It's always going to be somebody. It's always going to be a subversion within, right? From within. So many people have warned us about that. Abraham Lincoln was another one. When he was 28 years old, talking about, no foreign foe will ever take a drink from the Ohio or a step on the Blue Ridge. Never. Even with a Bonaparte for a commander. If we're going to die, we're going to die by our own suicide. He said that at the age of 28 years old. So many people that were prescient and visionaries and historic figures that were worldly and thought about these things, and also were men or women of action, would always talk about this kind of behavior and potential and possibility. And here we are. We are now in a place where this is it. This is a moment of existentialism for the United States of America. And I think that people are going to have to come to grips with it. It's not that everybody's got to get behind Donald J. Trump. It's people need to get behind this idea that we need to continue to be a constitutional republic based on ideas and based on the rights of citizens, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because all three of those things can be taken away.
Welcome back to More War Monday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, a new national security strategy in late July. That was former Trump National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, the chairman of the Gold Institute for International Strategy. And they held a two-day meeting back in late July to develop a new proposed national security strategy. In the general's opening letter of the draft document that I got a copy of, he writes, and I quote, "My fellow Americans, the United States now confronts a threat of unprecedented character, scope, and immediacy. In an earlier era, President John F. Kennedy described a long twilight struggle between freedom and authoritarianism, between democratic self-government and centralized control. That contest, once defined by geopolitical confrontation abroad, has entered a new and more insidious phase. Today, the principal strain on the American Republic rises not from foreign shores, but from within our own borders," close quote. And appropriately, the document itself states this, and I quote, "The purpose of this national security strategy is to identify three strategically significant but neglected threats and opportunities that directly impact U.S. national security long term. The first is an uncomfortable truth for much of official Washington. America's authoritarian adversaries have infiltrated and subverted from within every key American government agency and institution. This is not a new phenomenon, but the current depth, breadth, and ferocity of such is unprecedented," close quote. That's from the document that's being developed. Well, my guest today attended the conference and is here to discuss some of the challenges America faces in this crucial period. Chad Caton is former US Navy Seabee. He's a retired firefighter and first responder. I partnered with him on the Trump Veterans Coalition for the campaign, working for Gunny Sergeant Jesse Jane Duff, and he's a GOP political activist. No one knows South Carolina politics better than Chad Caton. And most recently, he's now the national field director of a group called the Conservative Caucus, which is a fantastic group. It's been around a long time, and I look for big things to come from that. I'm the state director of Mississippi. It's one of my hats that I wear. Chad, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, man.
Colonel, it's always a pleasure, man. I hope we keep it between the rails. Sometimes you and I have a tendency to get each other fired up. So nonetheless, I'm all for it because our country is moving quickly. It's like drinking from a fire hose, isn't it?
Yeah, it is drinking from a fire hose. And, you know, one of the things that you and I talked about this offline right after the conference, one of the questions I had was it's an outside group that's proposing a new national security strategy. That's not like this is unheard of, but this one's led by General Flynn. He's the former national security advisor for the current president of the United States and is doing a lot of activity talking about policy and those kind of things. And this is just Rob Maness talking, but it looks like he has an impact on presidential policy still, even from outside the government. So that got my attention. And then even more, and I don't know if you saw the clip in the opening or not, but it was General Flynn being interviewed by Jan from Epoch Times about internal threats. And historically, from a historical perspective, this is the first national security strategy proposal that I've ever seen that prioritizes the threat from internal actors, but linking it in large part, not all of it, but in large part to our authoritarian adversaries that have actually infiltrated our institutions. What was the atmosphere like at this conference?
Well, I will tell you, it was one of the most cathartic things I've ever done. Having been in a room with a third of the planet's ambassadors or foreign ministers in the building or in the room, some of which are actually at war with one another. China came through there. There was plenty of talk in the panels about China and their fingers and getting involved in other countries' overall geopolitical stance. It was very interesting to be able to sit back and talk to Hungary's foreign minister. I had a great conversation with a member of the German parliament about Antifa. This was one of the, again, most cathartic things I've ever done, to see the world come together to start dialogue. That's what the Eli Gold Institute and General Flynn were all about, is that we all need to get in a room and start talking about some things before we find ourselves in a position where we're pointing weapons at each other again. And you're right. This is the first international terrorism strategy that was looked at both within the United States, connected to these authoritarian and dictatorships that we look at as absolute enemies. But we got the people in the room, and that conversation started to happen, from everything from media all the way to trade. And it was very interesting also to see the effect of the Trump effect, right? The Trump effect with tariffs and the sort coming from these panels with these other foreign ministers and ambassadors speaking on behalf of their own country. It was a very interesting thing to be a part of, and I applaud Eli Gold and the head of the Gold Institute and General Flynn, the chairman, what they did and what they've tried to accomplish by getting people in the room before we just ignore one another and find ourselves losing our youngest again in some type of war.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to the internal threat being the main threat now, but it's linked to our adversaries. Folks, don't take that the wrong way. One of the things that I saw a comment from the document, and I can't remember it exactly, so I'll paraphrase it. It goes something like, internally, the woke left and the woke right are both having adverse actions on the president's peace through strength national security policy. Did you hear a discussion about that?
Absolutely. It was very interesting to hear other countries that consider themselves overtly conservative, like a Hungary, if you will. And then also a German parliamentary member of parliament that was adversely against his own government and how they are allowing things to happen and control from outside happening within their own country. It was so many. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the room's filled with spies, right? So it was very heavy having people talk about that. And again, General Flynn stood there in the middle of the room and basically said, this is what it is. This is what's going on. Here's the data. Here's what we know. And people need to start talking about it. And having it be an outside national security strategy, the last time it was put out was there was none put out with the Obama, Biden, same thing, administration. Trump did. And then here's the first one that came out of the Trump that's been released, if you will. And that was what General Flynn did as the national security advisor to Donald Trump before the deep state came after him. And he's never stopped. And it was amazing to see people and how they looked at our internal problems with our own domestic terrorist issues, and how they looked at us on the national stage, if you will. And I'll say this: people say that the Democrats are constantly saying that we look stupid to the rest of the country. That's not it at all. And there was so much love for the United States. There was a lot of people from Uganda, the ambassador from Uganda. She was amazing. But at the same time, they were all there trying to say, hey, America, you get pulled out USAID. We need this, we need that. And I thought that was probably one of the most interesting based on national security threats and what they saw coming from some of our adversaries into their country without our charity, if you will.
That's interesting because, from my perspective, the USAID was actually a subversion of foreign policy and national security strategy of the American style. The things that were being taught, being funded, was really subverting the message of, hey, we're the Republic of the United States of America. We don't want war with you. We want to trade with you, but we are going to be stronger than you, so you don't attack us. I mean, USAID.
That's exactly where Donald Trump's standing, right? Yeah. Walk softly with a big stick. And when some of the panels went up there, they were very, showing us we've moved out of this and the feeding people with our NGOs, which, we don't know at what level and what level went into the Democrats' pockets, because we know they use it as a funnel. But at the same time, they're saying by moving out of this humanitarian aspect of, say, Uganda, China is working its way in there to talk about to try to take control of its minerals and to bring communism into Uganda. They're fighting it, but they made really good points as to why we can be America first, but at the same time help those countries push back on communism altogether. Yeah.
Before we get to the first break, because next segment we're going to focus solely on China's infiltration. But before we get to that break, though, we are not, when I say we, those of us that support this effort and President Trump's policy of peace through strength, we are not isolationists. We get accused of that a lot. But we're not isolationists, and we're not afraid to use military power if it's the right circumstances for the right objectives and those kind of things. And if the American people are supporting it, we're not afraid to do that. But we get accused of isolationism a lot. Was there any discussion about countering that message?
There really was. And I thought that General Flynn and Boone Cutler, they did a fantastic job of saying, we understand that we are pulling back from something that is obviously flawed in the use of money, but we need to reestablish those connections and understand that we do need to have a foothold, be it a military base, or for that matter, we end up leasing the areas of their land for the mineral resources. It all comes back to tariffs and trade, and those are the things that are being discussed under the guise of national security through Donald Trump and his administration. And from what we're hearing from it on the ground with those foreign ministers, is they're nervous, but they're excited about the direction and what they're actually going to be able to get as a propping up of from the United States instead of us just dictating to them.
Wow, that's good. That's good news. I'm glad to hear that because we need our allies, and we're going to talk about that in this show too, about the approach to that, because that's one of the big three issues is strong partnerships and those kind of things. And they haven't been strong, even though the propaganda tried to say they were strong. They haven't been strong, and we have an effort now that's actually trying to do that. Tariffs and trade are one of those ways. We got to take a break, Chad. When we come back, we'll see a little clip about the infiltration of China into American institutions and why that's such a threat. We'll be right back with Chad Caton here on the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. Someday we'll change that title to More Peace Monday, maybe.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
We saw at Stanford University them bringing in individuals who then effectively became political commissars here in the United States, operating political warfare in the terms of going after Chinese nationals here. Also, students who were being sent to research facilities and their families being held hostage back in China. This is not a let's help educate Chinese citizens. This is a CCP attempt to effectively hold their own people hostage, deploy them forward to the United States, pilfer information, and then bring it back for the greater good of not China, but the CCP itself. I served as a counterintelligence officer for many years before coming to Congress, including in China, and we saw firsthand how Beijing always prioritizes the regime over the actual people within China. And the challenge is, under Trump 1, we were actually able to make some inroads here in turning attention back to China, holding these bad actors accountable. The universities of higher learning, in some cases, have been misled, I think, to put it kindly, to allow programs to be taught in China with U.S. technology, but never vetting the program on the back end. Having students sent to the United States under the legal auspice of coming here to study, to do research, to do greater good, but then watching that student be snatched back by the CCP right at a time where the U.S. has candidly helped this individual be very successful, and now they're working directly for the communist government.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking about the new proposed national security strategy meeting that happened in late July in Washington, D.C. The Gold Institute for International Strategy hosted that meeting. The chairman of that institute is Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, and Eli Gold heads the institute. And we're talking with Chad Caton. I'm fired up. The national field director of the conservative caucus, who was invited to that meeting as one of the folks to make inputs there. Chad, that was Zach Nunn, who's now a representative in Congress, and he was a former intel guy too, I think a China expert. He lays it out very well what's been happening for decades and decades now since we embraced China. The communists have been infiltrating our government. And it's to a degree, and our civilian institutions, and it's to a degree now where it's a visible internal threat, right?
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, Colonel, I don't remember any of the different dignitaries there. And we're talking very small countries to very large countries. Mm-hmm. There's Ecuadorian New Guinea. Didn't even know about it. I learned a lot about that, and I hope to go visit them someday. But they all had their own say about China, and China themselves were an existential threat to everything that we understand across the nation. To sit there in a room and look at a third of the world's ambassadors of the country, the planet's ambassadors, in one room, and pretty much 80% to 90% of them were all speaking in some way or another negatively about how China comes into their country and just starts sucking up the resources by giving them this or building a road or say, let us put a military base here. Let us get into your exotic minerals. Oil, gold, you name it. They want their hands in every aspect of it. And as you know, Colonel, that what they called Candyland in Afghanistan, when we pulled out so ugly with Joe Biden, China moved right into Candyland, which is filled with natural resources. So this isn't new, but to be in a room where the entire planet is saying China is moving in and we don't have the infrastructure to overtly push back, and being a poor country and they come in with bags of money to be able to help our citizens, it really puts it in a perspective of where we do have to stand on the world stage in comparison to being an isolationist, which I've never advocated for. Being a Seabee, I've been all over the world. I've helped other countries. I know the intrinsic value to that. And we have to be cognizant of that on Twitter and everywhere else. And this is why I always say, learn the game, play it better, and kick their behind. And that's why you have to learn the game, because ultimately, if we allow China to run roughshod on the 195 countries, I think it is, and allow them to pull those natural resources, the world's going to get very small for the United States. And before we know it, China will be something that we will not be able to control in any way, shape, or form, that being their attack or financial destruction of the United States.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm privy to a little bit of the discussion that happened there, and reading the document over the last day or so, the draft of it that I got my hands on. People are paying attention in this room to the right things. And I'll give you an example. Just before we came on today, news was breaking that the civilian companies that operate the ports at each end of the Panama Canal were having problems with the Panamanian government, and the Panamanians are going to put a rule on them that says no ship older than 17 years, no oil tankers or cargo ships older than 17 years old will be able to transit the canal, the primary choke point for the United States in any part of the world. Okay. Sure. And who builds most of the new ships in the world today? China built 73% of the new ships in the world today, and the United States builds a very, very tiny percentage of it. And I'm getting to my point here, and that is that the United States, and you mentioned it, that the NSS, the National Security Strategy, isn't just about military. It's a national security strategy that includes trade, and also part of that trade, the tariffs deal, is bringing manufacturing back to the country so that we have control over our own destiny. And this is just a numbers example. So if ships older than 17 years old aren't able to transit, oil tankers and cargo ships, then the Chinese are going to have free reign over the Panama Canal.
Well, I don't have the national security, the ear of the president for national security, but I will say this: the Panama Canal is as important as it is to our trade and our national security, as you stated. I have a hard time believing that we're going to, even in an obscure way, allow China to take overt control of the Panama Canal. We can take it back. We should take it back, and it's one of those things where this is how China is playing a war. They are absolutely at war with the United States. Granted, they're not dropping bombs. They're not out there trying to kill civilians or even our military for that matter, but they are systematically trying to hinder the United States, which is ironic because of Nike and all of our other cheap clothes and goods that are made in China. We've given them the money in trade to make them this powerful. We need to start turning things back very quickly, and Donald Trump is doing a fantastic job with tariffs and bringing these companies and organizations back to the United States. Can it happen fast enough? I highly doubt it. We have a semiconductor issue in Taiwan that we have to be very cognizant of. And China right now is flexing its muscles off of the coast of Taiwan. There are a lot of issues right now, and Donald Trump is pushing back on those with two nuclear subs off the coast of Russia that they told us about. And trying to figure out how we circumvent this. And this is exactly what I voted for. for somebody to push back hard enough and actually bring it back to we the people here in the United States. We are the best country in the world. We are the most powerful country in the world, and we need to protect our assets and our citizens in kind.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Oh, exactly. I mean, the Panama Canal was like one of the first things on the president's to-do list when he got back into office. And he sent Pete Hegseth down there and did a whole bunch of things to indicate to the Panamanian government that it is high on our radar and we're paying attention and we're going to prevent any shenanigans from occurring there. That's just an example of it.
So here we have shenanigans, right?
Trade.
Here come the shenanigans.
Trade, manufacturing, and national security are all linked together. And it's not just, this is not new stuff. The United States became a trade powerhouse. That's one of the things that gave us our wealth and created us into a superpower was our trade and our ability to trade around the world and our desire to do it peacefully, right? So one of the other things I was wondering how much was discussed there, and I'm sure it was because of what I read of the document, focuses on internal defense. That's my phrase, not the documents. But and that is that the Chinese communists have infiltrated our universities with these things called Confucius Institutes, and you can see the effects of that in the student protests. In support of the Hamas Nazis, where they say the U.S. is bad, the U.S. tied to Israel is bad, et cetera, et cetera. That is Chinese communism and Marxism exhibiting itself from the effect of our student population here in the United States, isn't it? Was there a discussion of that and how to address that?
Well, there was a huge discussion on American education. And having these other foreign ministers and ambassadors there, they were making a plea to we are better off as a U.S. educated person to come back to, say, Uganda. I keep going back to Uganda because she was actually the ambassador of Uganda was so articulate and well-spoken, beautiful lady. And she talked about how she is American educated. She went to the University of Arizona. And she said, it's helped my country exponentially to have Ugandans come to the United States and get the education that we get here. But at the same time, Uganda is over, in the conservative aspect to where they're trying to take their country to be wealthy. She said that you have to monitor your universities. Your universities are pumping out Marxism. They are Chinese influences all over our universities. And this is coming from somebody that was U.S. educated and is now a ambassador to the United States from Uganda. She talks about all the time how maybe it makes more sense if the United States universities had the ability to bring their universities to our countries. And it comes down to security. Uganda is not overtly a safe place. Yes, they can have safe places. But again, that's where the investment needs to come from different organizations or the Ugandan government. Having a Ugandan ambassador that was able to speak so freely that in regards to that, it made a lot of sense. And a lot of the other ambassadors were privy to that and thought it was good. And I always point towards the third world countries because they're the ones that are trying to get a step up instead of getting slaughtered by China or any of the other axis of evil, if we're calling it that these days. But they're very nervous because they are the low-hanging fruit, and they believe that they will be the first to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, aren't they worried about what we were doing too through USAID with pushing things like transgender ideology and forcing them in order to get the resources they were asking for or hoping for? They had to sign up to certain crazy policies and ideas. Are they worried about that?
The third world countries weren't talking about USAID in any way, shape, or form. For whatever trickled to them, they enjoyed, right? But when you, one of them, the ambassadors that really kind of lit the room up was the ambassador to Hungary, and he basically called it out, and he said, and he was a former general, so he's had some time, and he speaks a little salty. And he said straight up, he goes, I don't know what's wrong with you people. I don't have any idea what the Americans are doing right now with this LGBTQ and trans this and trans that. It makes America look weak. And I remember him saying that, and it sent shiver down my spine. Here is Hungary, who's a tough country, mostly because of their geography. But nonetheless, this man has seen war. He's seen how it works. And then Kurdistan, their foreign minister actually spoke on that too, and it said, it's really hard for us to look to a country as something as a mentor, meaning we need to progress in the idea of a republic and a democracy, when we're looking over there going ideologically and morally, we don't agree at all. So it's hard for us to sell the idea of what America is about in free trade and its republic when we're looking at the moral compass of the country being all over the place under LGBT and the trans movement. So it was very interesting. I didn't see anybody up there that was liberal enough to say it's great and it's grand, it's groovy. There was no French people there. There was none of the usual liberal folks that wanted to be anywhere near General Flynn, or for that matter, anybody else. But it was very interesting to see their perspective on what the United States portrays through our media, which was a big topic also.
Yeah. Well, we got to take another break, Chad. When we come back, we'll see a little clip about our allies are in danger of falling. So the strength of our partnerships isn't necessarily just about them spending enough to be our allies and providing for their own defense leadership, which is true. The president's driving that, especially in NATO in the Pacific. But our allies are being infiltrated. That's a huge concern and should be part of America's national security strategy to help address it. We'll be right back with Chad Caton of the Conservative Caucus.
What is the terrorist event scenario that really keeps you up at night? Not just because of the event itself, but the implications of it.
The fall of Europe. It's the fall of Europe. It's the fall of the United Kingdom is on the brink. The government of Sweden, the Prime Minister said a few weeks ago that he has lost control of the monopoly of violence. His government has lost control of the monopoly of violence. He was very honest, but I think in many ways that's where Germany is at, where France is at, and those countries falling like domino effects, that is my nightmare. And they have done that through settlement, through infiltration in their institutions, including political parties, so that the government in office today, the Labour government, has done more to accommodate in the last 8 months than anything else. And that is my nightmare, that the West starts to fall apart.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about this new national security strategy proposal developed by General Mike Flynn and Eli Gold out of the Gold Institute. That's hitting the streets right about now. The meeting was in late July, and one of the attendees at that meeting is my guest today, Chad Caton, who is not just an attendee, but part of the process of discussing and listening to each other and building this thing. Chad, one of the three major pillars, from what I could gather from my reading of the draft, is that the United States has to have good partnerships, allies, essentially. But the concern is that, like the United States has been infiltrated by our authoritarian government allies and non-government or adversaries, not allies, and non-government adversaries, our friends like the Europeans are heavily infiltrated and are much further along with these. I don't know. The president said the other day I think it was to the German chancellor, I don't know what you're doing with this immigration, with this infiltration of Islamists and military-age young men primarily. And we see reports out of the UK that they're bringing in more military-age young men, video reports, putting them in the hotel, and now the British police, this is why you never give up your guns, folks, here in America. The British police have banned certain groups from protesting out inside of the hotel where these military-age Islamist males are going to be. So what was the discussion about from that perspective of the United States needing to make sure we have strong partners and allies?
Well, come back to the idea of the discussion about people coming across your border and not shutting it down through immigration. We were actually touted, well, at least President Donald Trump was touted by a lot of these countries saying, I'm really happy that you guys have got it under control because my country, and then they would talk about their country, some of which were saying that, we don't have an immigration problem or anything. And that's why a lot of the European Union was not at this particular event. Again, there was a member of parliament that was there, and he was very outspoken as to what's happening in Europe with Muslim refugees. And the Muslim refugee problem, the infidada, is happening. The caliphate is talked about. He said we couldn't even walk out of the front of our parliament because now not only is it free Palestine type of thing, but it's also morphing into the Antifa movement, which is huge in Germany. He actually showed me another member of parliament that took a bat to the front of his forehead, and it split his head open all the way to the back of it. I mean, it's getting very dangerous, and they're not wrong. Look around. I think it's in Great Britain alone, there are 11 mayors that are all Muslim. And the thing is that we have to recognize history, right? And I know you play in the world of history a lot. You study it. And this has happened before. It's 1,400 years that we dealt with this movement, and then we took it over as Christians. And here we are with it. They're trying to come back, and we're actually having our own governments allowing it to happen. There's other countries out there that's like, well, we don't put up with that. And they gave a hat tip to Donald Trump saying, you can't have a sovereign country if you don't control your borders. This was a big discussion, and it made some countries, ambassadors, a little awkward because they may be from a Muslim country, right? So, but they were kind of honest about it, saying that we do have an extremist side of Muslim, but the Muslim people are peaceful. And look, we can argue that all day, what it says in the Quran, what it says in, I think it's EFO 8, that all infidels should either bow or be beheaded. So there was a lot of that conversation, but again, when you get into religion and that, it had a way to move away from it. But the open immigration policies of Europe and the radical Muslim and the overwhelming amount of Muslims that have gone into Europe was a huge part of the discussion, to the point where they were actually bringing about real censorship to the German people because they didn't want to offend any of the immigrants. And that just made the room blow its mind. I mean, I think Laura Logan asked like 10 questions wanting to know more about why this is happening and how, Germany is allowing this to happen. And we all know Germany is very progressive and with Angela Merkel, and it's going to be a bigger problem. And what that lady said in the beginning of this segment is absolutely right. And I actually heard it from the ambassadors and the foreign ministers that were at this event, and they were also equally as tired, to the point where I told him, you know, if you got a problem with Antifa, I'm sure we could get some veterans to go over there with diplomatic immunity and handle it. We'll be home by lunch. You know, it was a joke, but at the same time, he was very excited about the idea and said we may be able to make this happen. But you know me, I can't stand people that take advantage of other people. I will always stick to my oath. And it was hard to sit there and listen to these world leaders say that we're being taken over from the inside. Yeah,
it's very concerning, because if your allies are hollow inside and they can't be relied upon because this ideology, and when I talk about the Muslim issue, I'm talking about the Islamist fundamentalist ideology, which may be part of Islam, but what I'm talking about are the Nazis like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranians that are extreme, it's only natural that when you import millions of military-age males, a certain percentage of them are going to be from that extreme ideology. As a matter of fact, Osama bin Laden was setting up schools called madrasas all over Pakistan to teach that to young men. And it just makes no sense to me and like the Hungarians, I think the Hungarians are the presidency of the EU right now, but they're also the most opposed to open borders, and they refuse to allow it to happen because they're protecting their country. But the EU and the other European countries are pressuring them to open up to allow these guys to come in. But when you look at the crime rates in places like Sweden, is a disaster. France, the UK, you mentioned it, Germany. I mean, they're all experiencing, and the reason Laura Logan was interested is because she got gang raped by a bunch of Islamists in Egypt. Remember that? Yes. Under the Obama administration. So she's very aware of the virulent nature of this extremism, and that it becomes impossible to stop. And you don't necessarily have to be 100% of the people coming in are of that strain, but it just has to be a certain percentage, because they're the most vocal, they're the most active, and they just roll over the rest of that society. Did you hear anything about, from the U.S. perspective, the folks that are making input to this proposal of national security strategy, about what the U.S. can do or should be doing to monitor these countries, to assist them with identifying the threat? How is that? Because our trust in our institutions as Americans is so low right now. The things that I just said send red flags and alarm bells to the average American.
Yeah, it was discussed to a point, enough that I can speak to this. It was, I believe, Boone Cutler. He was up there with a panel, and he said, "What can you do for the United States, and what can the United States do for you?" And that's diplomacy, if you will, right? So I thought it was a very interesting question. It brought about some very interesting answers. And when it came to the intifada and what the radical Muslims are trying to accomplish in Europe, they said that it's really hard for the Americans to do anything because our upper echelon of leadership is in fact bowing or kneeling to the radical Muslims. So really, there's not a whole lot we can do. And they talked around it, but nobody said it. So I'll say it. Basically, what I heard is either the leadership has to change very quickly and bring about swift change like Donald Trump has done with our immigration issue, or the United States are going to have to come in and try to save us. That's kind of the way I heard it. And everybody, in diplomacy speak in circles. So, but that's kind of what I took away from it to bring it down to its minutia for your audience, is that they're not sure we can come back from it unless there was a Donald Trump or the people realized it. There's a lot of issue with fraud in their elections. They're worried about that now because you've had the extremists get involved in every aspect of their government in a lot of these larger European countries. And it was interesting because, again, Hungary sat back there and just kept looking at everybody going, this is on you. This is your fault, and he's like, Hungary's not going to need your problem or their issue because we've taken care of what we need to take care of within our country. And an interesting thing to that, Hungary having such a hard line, they actually spend 6% of their GDP on the concept and education of why family matters, keeping families together.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you have 2 children in Hungary, you do not have to, the female does not pay taxes for the rest of her life. All you have to have is 2 children. And the idea of state keeping the family together, the father doesn't have to pay taxes either, as long as they're still together. So all of the benefit is to the idea of the nuclear family and what Hungary does. And I'm not saying that I'm the biggest Hungary fan. They've done some pretty ugly stuff to some people, and it is what it is. We all have our history. But what they're doing in regards to the immigration, to see somebody with the arrogance of Hungary sit up there and basically, and I say that in the most respectful way, and say, this isn't complicated. Protect your borders. Know who's in your country is essentially what he kept saying. And, I don't see there being a whole lot of help from the United States or anything we can do overtly unless we lift up a conservative government that can go in there and make radical changes involved in their charters, their constitutions, and their immigration. So I don't know that the United States is going to be there to clean it up. It may just be a loss. I don't know. I'm not high enough to put that together. I have my own opinion, but we're speaking as to what happened at this particular event.
Well, the family policy is important. We'll talk about that when we come back from the break, because I'm going to show you, it's a propaganda video, guys, but it's a U.S. propaganda video, and it's this administration's video about lethality and peace through strength and what it means. And we're going to talk about those U.S. nuclear submarines and that tweet with Chad here after this break. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
No more distractions. No more electric tanks. No more gender confusion. No more climate change worship. We are laser focused on our mission of warfighting.
We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. It's called peace through strength.
You look into the eyes of these young Americans who are giving up the best years of their life in a uniform to serve their nation. They are incredible.
Through our power and might, we will lead the world to peace. Our friends will respect us, our enemies will fear us, and the whole world will admire the unrivaled greatness of the United States military. We will replenish the pride of our armed forces, end the recruitment crisis.
We don't fight because we hate what's in front of us. We fight because we love what's behind us.
God bless you. God bless our armed forces. God bless our men and women serving overseas. And God bless the United States of America.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. But just as you heard right there from the President of the United States himself, we will measure our success, most importantly, by the wars we don't have to fight and get into. And part of that reason we don't have to do that is what you just saw from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and the Armed Forces of the United States. No more distractions. We're focused on increasing our lethality. We're focused on war fighting in the Department of Defense. As a matter of fact, the president has floated the idea, and I think he should do it, is return the department back to a Department of War so that when it speaks, people listen much more closely, and we get the diplomacy piece and the other instruments of power issues out of the hands of war fighters and back to where they should be in diplomats, and clean that up, because peace through strength means exactly that: peace, not war, and being strong and not weak. And my guest today is Chad Caton. He was at the conference where General Flynn and Eli Gold, team from the Gold Institute of International Strategy, had a conference to help develop and draft a new national security strategy proposal. And Chad, one of the things that were highlighted in that proposal was the protection of American primacy, the way General Flynn's words were. And you mentioned the post from the President of the United States about moving 2 nuclear submarines to the appropriate vicinity after Medvedev in Russia had talked about using nuclear weapons several times off bombastically. And that's exactly the type of move that I would expect to see this president do, both publicly transmit it and then do it, but without escalating. I even said when I was first interviewed, I said it could be escalatory if the Russians take it, depending on how the Russians see it, but it would be mildly escalatory at best, because the Russians are going to see what we're doing, and we're going to see what they're doing with our nuclear forces. But that's the essence of what we're talking about here with peace through strength in that video, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. That video it makes every veteran and active duty member of our small community very excited to be part again of that pride in the strength of the most powerful world or world power on this planet. And the thing is that we are an empathetic country. We do care. We want moral high ground for the most part. Have we done things that we're not overtly proud of? Yes. But at the same time, we have always tried to be the good one on the block, right? And to have a president that's looking at bullies now, be it Vladimir Putin and Medvedev. Medvedev's just running his mouth. I don't know he's lost his mind for some reason. But and I love the fact that Donald Trump actually looked at him and said, well, you're not Putin, but I'm going to go ahead and hear you and react to it based off of your own elementary and ideological statements. And we haven't heard much since we put 2 Titan submarines off their coast. And that's what we told them. That's why they call them, the whole idea of our submarines are to be silent and nobody knows where they're at. That's the whole point. But Trump went out there and said, yeah, I put a couple of bad boys off the end, off their coast. If they want to keep running their mouth, then we're going to do the FO part of FAFO. So I love our president. I love what he's standing for. And that was widely discussed, and not to be rude, but to the respect given by a third of the planet's ambassadors that were at this event. They were very complimentary of the United States. And I actually saw what fear, political fear, and being the big dog on the porch means, because everybody was shaking each other's hands and everybody was okay. nobody wanted to make an issue or a statement that would cause an issue for their country. And it was because we are the United States and they were at our house. So Trump's doing it the right way. And I think that through this national security strategy that was put out by the Gold Institute and General Flynn, it echoes that sentiment pretty hard.
Yeah, there's a great article by our friend Amuse on X. It's a Substack article, but he's linked it on X about his thoughts on that. And you're exactly right. This was really a message to Putin, is what I said in my interviews, to get his attack dog called off. But it really didn't go into enough specifics to indicate whether something was actually changing. But it's a reminder, as Amuse said, that we are the big dog on the block. And we do have nuclear submarines that you don't have in places that you don't know about. And that includes Russia. Even though they have a bigger nuclear arsenal, they don't have a bigger nuclear submarine fleet for shooting ICBMs like we do. That's our insurance policy. Well, we got one question
I like to
from the
think
audience.
That the former president, I'm sorry, Colonel. I like to think that former president got a phone call right after that statement with Putin losing his ever-loving mind, going, what is wrong with you?
Shut up.
You know, I have a whole conversation in my head that makes me laugh, because here is the former president of Russia sitting there going, my bad, sir, my bad, sir, my bad, sir. We don't know that he's alive. I've been keep looking to see if he's posted. I haven't seen anything.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's deadly serious business. In the interviews I said, hey, look, if they take it the wrong way, you could see this, and this happen, then we'll respond with this, and this. And we could be back to the 1990s. But hopefully, I don't think that's happening. I think what we think is happening is happening. All right, we got a question from the audience. Go ahead, Shell. What's the question, real quick?
AJ, go ahead.
Thank you for the mic show, Colonel. Chad, great to hear your voices. I just wanted to let you know that today, the spokesperson of Kremlin, Dmitry Peskov, stated that the Vladimir Putin will not rule out meeting with Stephen Witkoff this week in Moscow, which further underlines your stance in the sense that Medvedev and all that hot air is nothing but a bluff, which President Trump has called on correctly and successfully. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's I'll let you take it, Chad, but that's peace through strength. I mean,
want
it's easy to say that, but go ahead. Go ahead, Chad.
I would give anything to be Witkoff's assistant. I'll get his coffee, whatever. Just take me with you, because I want to see these guys be like. And can you imagine being Witkoff walking in there going, all right, so who's running their mouth? You know, how about we stop doing that and before you all get a black eye? Because frankly, if I was sitting there, I'd just be like, and they couldn't take me. I'd laugh too hard, because I would look. I know Witkoff would walk in there and be like, hey, you guys are going to keep running your mouth. We're going to sanction everything. And I just saw today that the president of the United States actually went to India saying, you're going to continue trying to get Russian oil. We're going to keep raising the tariffs on anything you bring into the United States. Yeah. Donald Trump is not playing games. And that's what it is supposed to be, to bring the world back to a neutrality, right? To bring us to where we could be neutral, get into trade, have good diplomacy, be able to talk with one another, have that open line to Putin. But Biden wouldn't even talk to Putin. He refused. Yeah. I mean, if you remember back to Ronald Reagan, he called Gorbachev Gorby. I was at Reagan's funeral in Simi Valley, California. Gorbachev was there with the stain on his head and everything. And it's because of diplomacy that we're able to have the trade and keep this planet from more wars. And that's why we got to get rid of people like Lindsey Graham. We just can't have the ones out there poking the bear.
Oh, you just had to go down the political route. But that's okay. I mean, look, national security is an extension of politics. That's the way it is. But you did bring that up, Chad. And I know there was discussion about the Ukraine policy and the Russia war. I will just say that I think the Russian army has established several salients along that front that they've been working on for months now. Yep. And Putin's probably pretty close to achieving his military objectives. So when you combine everything together, I'm not surprised to hear the announcement AJ said was going to happen. We got about 30 seconds left, my friend. Tell folks what the future is for this national security strategy proposal and where to find you on X.
You can find me on X at I'm Fired Up #2. Still can get my first one back. And as far as the national security strategy, it's ever changing. And I know that General Flynn and the rest of the Gold Institute is looking at each individual country to try to bring that diplomacy together and have those conversations so that we never find ourselves with dead young people again. And again, that's why I am the national field director of the Conservative Caucus, and we're building an army to make sure the Lindsey Grahams and the other people that do not have our best interest at heart are removed from office once and for all. We bring MAGA to where it is the new Republican Party. It's time for the boomers to take a nap and move on. I have had enough, and we are taking out Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. We are taking out John Cornyn. We are taking out McConnell. We are taking out Tillis. We are taking out these people that have put our country in this position. And so help me God, I will not sleep until midterms. It's time to bring it home.
Yeah, we're going to do our level best to replace the Mitch McConnells of the world with MAGA types like Nate Morris up in Kentucky that my Gator Pack just got behind this morning officially. All right, Chad, we'll see you later. Thank you very much. Tomorrow's Training Tuesday. T.S. Dixon, the author, will be here. We're talking again about his new audiobook release, Why Woke is Not Dead, but it's actually resurgent in America. This ties into national security, folks, especially this one. So I'll see you then.